feature presentation.
So, Todd, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I wanted to ask you because watching this film, tonally, the shifts between subversive humor but also sincerity within the characters and their interior lives is so apparent. Did that play when you were reading the script, and in terms of Sammy Birch being a new screenwriter as well and so confident in its style?
Oh no, everything, how you just characterized the script and Sammy and my experience reading it is spot on. All of those gears were in play on the page. And so remarkably so for such a new writer, a young writer, because it takes real confidence to not lock down how you feel about this or that. And this is sort of our preset mode these days in culture, I think, is to go in with a very firm and immobile sense of our moral perspectives about this or that or how things should be represented. And she just started to let those things melt, those lines shift. And I love that about the script. It's what Natalie loved about the script. And then ultimately when we brought it to Julianne, it's what she turned her on as well.
With May December, Wonderstruck, Carol, and Dark Waters, you've been working with screenwriters and adapting work that you haven't particularly written yourself. So I'm curious, is it a freeing experience to kind of work with a screenplay that isn't your own, or do you feel a greater sense of responsibility to the writer in getting their voice through into the film?
I'm not sure it's either. When you're writing your own script, you have this long period of especially in some films that required such intense amounts of research as a writer for me, like films about Bob Dylan or the Velvet Underground, the glam rock era from Velvet Goldmine. But you're still working on the page, and you have images in your head. And of course, there's cinematic references that will start to connect to what you're doing or trigger what you're doing earlier than it would a script that you receive. But all of that is required whether you wrote it or not. And there's a certain part where you just gotta let the script go, and you can't be responsible to anything but what you've assembled for the production and what you're shooting on the camera in that liquid place of shooting a movie. And then once that ends, you gotta let that go, and you are committed to what is solid in the footage. And that's what you have to work with. So it's a constant process of letting go everything you imagined beforehand and being as present as possible. And so that's been true. And that's true for each phase along the way. And I used to cut my own films. I was cutting on Velvet Underground with Fonzie and Adam, and had the most amazing time really getting my fingers back on the gears of the editing, which I love to do. But each phase is its own unique process, whether you're literally hands-on or inheriting elements, and it's all a collaborative art.
Was there a visual in the script that you were most excited to direct? Because there's one sequence I keep thinking about, which is the graduation dress scene, and the way that you frame the mirrors, and also just working with Christopher Blauvelt. And obviously this is a new collaboration for yourself, because the work that you've done with Edward Lachman has been emotionally devastating and such iconic work.
Yeah, Ed was gonna shoot this, and he had an injury. He broke his femur bone, and I only heard about it 2 weeks before we were starting our full prep in Savannah. So it was late in the game, and it was like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? I had to ask Kelly Reichardt's permission to let me talk to Chris Blauvelt. And she was like, oh my God, seriously? I'm gonna track him down for you right away. The scene that made me wanna shoot the film, made me wanna make the film, that set in motion the visual motifs of the film, was the final monologue of Elizabeth's toward the end. And I read it, and I just immediately thought of this scene in an Ingmar Bergman movie called Winterlight. And it's Ingrid Thulin, the actor, reciting a letter to the lens of the camera. in a medium shot with a neutral background. And it's a love letter to the priest character in the unrequited love letter to the priest character in the movie. And I was a teenager when I saw it, and I was just completely riveted by the simplicity of the frame and the conductivity of the performance within it. Of course, you need somebody like Ingrid Thulin or Liv Ullmann or Bibi Anderson or maybe Natalie Portman and Julianne Moore to make these conceptual ideas come to life, right? And to gain the audience's interest and to make you lean into it, you know? So I was very lucky, but it ultimately, the burden lands on the performers.
It's an incredible movie. Thank you so much for taking the time
Thank
to
you.
talk to me. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.